Have you ever just wondered how the flight test guys get their big airplanes to fly? I'm sure you guys have seen the Monster Radial motors that they're coming out with, and today we're going to look at one. So I'm here today at my local flying club, and I've got the Sukhoi Su-29, and this is a Model Tech model that I picked up at a swap meet for 60 bucks. And I have my club president here who also happens to be the regional IMAC director. For those of you who don't know what IMAC is, it is the International Miniature Aircraft Association or something like that. They specialize in precision aerobatics. And one thing that I've learned with this airplane as I've been testing it and flying it is that learning to do these precise aerobatic maneuvers is that it is making me a better pilot. So you are picking a point and guiding the airplane to it rather than pointing the airplane in one direction and hoping that it follows that one. So I'm just gonna be here at the field today. I'm gonna get some more instruction from my club president, and it's gonna be a great time. Right off the bat, I'm gonna give you guys the specs of this motor. It's a 420 kV motor, roughly puts it in the 60 size class of motor. It's approximately equivalent to the E-flite 60, not the 470 kV that they have, but around the 400. They're all a little bit different in this class for some reason, but it performs about the same. It's funny because I've got a 370 kV motor in my Corsair, and it flies just the same, pretty much, same approximate performance and speed. Along with this motor, I decided not to use the ESCs that Flight Test is providing along with this motor. I believe those are based on the Simon K firmware. Because I wanted to keep track of telemetry and really understand how much power this motor is consuming, I'm using the FR Sky 80 amp ESC that I have, and it keeps track of the amount of amps that I'm using, how much amps I'm pulling, and the voltage on the battery as well as the RPM. So along with that, I was able to test it on a 1510 as well as a 16.8 prop, and I'm flying on 6 cells. And I've been consistently using the same 5800 milliamp hour setup. They're both pulling around 90 amps around max dynamically. I can pull a little bit more than that too. You know, if you have to figure that, you know, if you get to 100 amps or 110 amps and you've got 20 some odd volts, you multiply those two together and you end up getting around 2400 watts. But I can say that I'm consistently flying this, based on my telemetry, I'm consistently flying this motor around 2000 watts, and it just doesn't care. It just does not care. Very, very impressive. The flight packs that I'm using along with either the 1510 or the 16.8 give me around 5 to 6 minute flight time, with the packs coming down around 3.8 volts per cell, so around storage charge. Obviously I can get a little bit longer, it's just how I personally fly, but just something to be aware of. So if you factor this in with the model that I'm choosing to use, it gives us roughly 100 to 120 watts per pound. And so if you figure approximately how much you know, these flight test planes usually weigh, and I've talked with lots of people about their various large builds, you're talking about one motor being able to potentially fly a 16 to 20 pound airplane. That's a lot of airplane. Way back several months ago, when Flight Test featured an episode with the Monster Radial, I've been in touch with Josh Bixler in the past, and I sent him a text and said, hey man, this is right up my alley. because this is about the same size motor that I fly on basically all of my models, whether it be Balsa or one of my composite builds. And I just asked him, when can I expect this to be available? And I'd love to get a hold of one and evaluate it to use on one of my models. And he said, I'd love the opportunity for you to review it for us. So here I am. And I am evaluating this on a Model Tech Sukhoi Su-29, and it has a wingspan about 61 inches. It's around 1/6 scale. I did have to modify it. I had to cut a hole in the motor box for installing the batteries. I had to cut a hole for the ESC so that it was going to get proper cooling. Had to make a hatch in the cowl for installing the batteries, but all in all, the conversion to electric took about 2 hours, so not bad. I did make a motor mount out of aircraft ply and epoxy just to give the proper spacing from where the firewall is to where the motor is supposed to sit. I wanted to make sure that the spinner would clear and there wouldn't be anything binding, and yeah. But with all the modifications and the flight packs, the center of gravity came out to be a little bit nose heavy, which is good for this airplane. I bought this airplane more or less out of a conversation that I had with another club member at one of our club meetings. And we got talking about how he flies IMAC. And IMAC is all about precision aerobatics. And I've never been into aerobatics, but we got into the conversation about how the flying, the precision aspect of it it makes you a better pilot. And that gave me reason to stop and think, because I always say I'm a fair pilot. I really don't know how to do any crazy maneuvers or anything like that. I know how to recover pretty well, but I make mistakes just like anybody else. So I thought this might be a great opportunity for me to really think outside the box, do something that's not within my normal comfort zone, and become a better pilot. And for those who don't know, this is what an IMAC sequence looks like. This is the 2019 basic. It's slightly different based off of the wind pattern and how you enter, but it's the same sequence, just forwards or backwards. And I hope to learn how to fly this entire sequence by the end of this summer. I'm getting better. Right now I'm primarily focusing on my loops because my loops look terrible. And I'm also working on Cuban and inverted Cuban 8s, just because they have a lot of the different maneuvers that you need to have in order to do pretty much everything else. The spin is pretty easy at the very end. I've done Immelmans all the time, and there's an Immelman in this. So that's the goal. That's the goal. And my club president is helping to teach and mentor me and learn how to do some of this stuff. He's used to bigger gas stuff, but the airplane does what the airplane does. So what I've learned in trying to fly this airplane for IMAC is that number one, I've got plenty of power. And I have had absolutely zero issues with reliability using this motor on this airplane. I've also learned that I'm terrible with loops. My Cuban 8s are getting better and consistent, but really it's about use of the airspace. So I'm using the airspace as intended, and not just having the airplane go wherever I point the nose. I have a point in my head where I want the airplane to go, and I'm navigating the airplane to it. It's a little bit different thinking, but it's definitely more of a challenge and gives me more intent as a pilot. So how does this motor stack up against others? So I have flown using an E-flite motor, a motor that is made by Supo, and that one was made for Grayson Hobby. I've flown with Hobby King NTM motors. I've flown with Hobby King SK3 motors. I have a large SK3 motor on my Curtis P6 Hawk that swings an 1812 prop. How does this stack up? It's solid. It is a very solid motor. It's definitely on par in terms of power and performance with all of those motors. I will say that the current design, I don't know if this is a prototype or a final. I haven't been able to confirm that with any of the flight test guys. But the way that the prop mounts is there is a single shaft. There is no bolt-on shaft. And the grub screw, when it came to me, the grub screw was loose and it didn't have any Loctite on it. So when I went to tighten the prop, the whole thing kind of shifted and there was a lot of friction. And yeah, so I don't know if that's final or not. I don't know if there's, a quality issue because these are prototype motors, but I'm sure it will be worked out by then. Very well balanced. The bearings are very quiet. Also, there were no grips on the top washer or on the motor bell to grip onto the prop while you're tightening it. That was a little bit frustrating because I had to hold the motor in order to tighten the nut, and I haven't had to do that before. In talking with Josh, they are intending to have this motor available at Flight Fest in July. And speaking of Flight Fest, I want to make sure that everybody knows that I will be going to Flight Fest, and once again I will be donning a red shirt as part of the flight crew. Andre has graciously invited me to participate in that again, and we absolutely need all the volunteers that we possibly can get for this event. So please sign up. The link will be down here and it'll be in the description below. Looking forward to seeing you all there. So that's like a month and a half from now. And no word on pricing, but I wouldn't expect it to be some crazy price. The flight test guys have been very, very good about keeping their prices very affordable. That being said, the Hobby King motors around this size are around $50. I would expect that the price would be about the same. If it's a little bit less, great. If it's a little bit more, that's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but there you go. We'll find out in a little bit. So in conclusion, I've loved this motor. It has performed exceptionally well. I had intended to do like a whole technical write-up about it, but as I got into the technical aspects, I realized it was a little out of my wheelhouse and it was kind of a boring video. So I went back to the drawing board and just wanted to talk about this different aspects of the hobby, flying IMAC, as well as trying this new motor out in conjunction with that. And I haven't looked back. That being said, I have a winter build coming up that I absolutely will be using this flight test motor in. I'm really excited to do that, and I think it's going to make the project fly fantastic. Finished up the P47, and I've got a little contest. A young man in my club recently left the area, and I've tried to find homes for some airplanes that he had. I have an airplane that is new in box and has never flown, and I'm going to give it away. But the catch is that in the comment below, you can comment once, and I will be checking. I have such a small number of followers that I can check this very easily. How many rivets are on the P47? Price is Right rules, so if you end up going over, you are automatically out. And I will be giving that person, if they are going to Flight Fest, I will be giving them this airplane. And I am not going to ship it to someone else, so you have to be going to Flight Fest in order to participate in this. Just to have a little fun, just a little give back to the community. Really appreciate you guys for watching. I also now have an Instagram account, so if you want to see what I'm doing on a more daily basis, I am posting as daily as I can. I think I've missed one day in the last month or so. So go ahead and follow me there. Joshua Orchard RC on Instagram. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys really look forward to experimenting with these new Flight Test Radial Monster motors. And I know you're going to love them. And just because I love them, and our community is very tight. We think a lot alike, and I very much look forward to seeing at Flight Fest what flying works of art they can create with this new tool.